thank you so much for accepting to be here in this interview with me.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's really lovely to be here.
Mm. Kim, would it be okay for you to share a little bit of your background with us? Your background as a coach and maybe how did you get into coaching?
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, my background is in teaching. So I was a assistant head of sixth form, a big sixth form in Warwickshire, 500 people. And I was very interested in how kind of the middle set of people were not reaching their potential and
Mhm.
how they were dealing with challenges, how they were dealing with obstacles, and how they were, the only way I can put it is how they were moaning a lot. And I was fascinated by that. So I actually left teaching because I wanted to take that further. I found that in my role as a pastoral lead, I was coaching young people anyway, but I wanted to reach more people. And I also was really interested in positive psychology. So I left teaching to do my master's in positive psychology and coaching. And from that, I started straight away as a coach. As soon as I'd done the coaching modules, I started straight away. I remember praying for like four clients, if I can just
Mm.
have four clients. And now I probably have two, three clients a day. Um, I coach teachers and head teachers because I knew that they were struggling. I knew that they were in a really difficult system. And I moved away from young people quite quickly. I didn't want to just stay in that niche, so I went to teachers and head teachers. And more recently, I am working with resident doctors. So, because they're in education still, they've come out of foundation training and now they're training right up to consultancy level. And I'm a coach for them, but I'm also a supervisor for the resident doctors as well. But I haven't really niched, which may come into the supervision later, because I still see everyday people and lots of professional people as well. And I also coach informed coaching for a charity who looks after women who've been abused.
Mhm.
So
A
I
really
don't
varied
really have a
background.
niche. I'm very wide, and I do that on purpose.
Mm. Which can be a great foundation for a supervisor because you're meeting different coaches from different schools of thought. This variety in your work can really come handy in the supervision work. But before
And
we
yeah, and
get
what's interesting
that,
about that is in each area that I supervise, that I coach in, I have a different supervisor for that area.
interesting.
So what I'm noticing is different approaches, different styles, and so it's been great for that supervision overview as well. I think at the moment I've got three supervisors.
Hmm, that's really interesting because
Yeah.
there's three different needs.
Yes, very
Yes.
different needs. Yeah.
Mhm. And Kim, what led you to train as a supervisor, to want to train?
Well, firstly, I had a supervisor for my private practice because it was just me on my own at first. And he was amazing, but a very different style to me. So I was very much positive psychology at that time. I was mainly positive psychology and cognitive behavior coaching. And he was doing more of the chimp paradox and that kind of area of coaching, which was completely new to me. And I started with him and I learned so much from him. But I just find it fascinating that we could talk about my approaches and his approach, even though we're different, and still get so much value out of that. And he directed me to the ICCS, and because he trained with you as well. And he said you should really do it because you're fascinated in the approaches. I didn't do it straight away. I must admit, I felt a little bit like, oh, who am I to to do that? But as my clientele widened and the type of people I was coaching and the type of supervision I was observing, I thought, no, I would really love to do this. And I thought, I'll go on the course and I'll see how I do. And if I don't feel confident, I won't carry on. But yeah, I can't. The course was absolutely brilliant. And I felt really ready to go out and practice after I'd been on the course. I think it was 6 months. the tuition, the resources. I still go back to my notes. Yeah, it was really comprehensive, and I just felt really confident that I could go out and supervise.
Mm. Kim, this is something about the readiness part that you were talking at the beginning. Do you mind if we go a little bit deeper? Because it is a question for a lot of coaches in terms of how do I know I'm ready?
Yeah, I think
I mean,
I asked for other people in the industry's viewpoint as well. So I
mhm,
started doing my chartership for to become a chartered coaching psychologist with the British Psychological Society. And I was experiencing a lot of supervision with them. And what that process made me do is look back over my coaching of what I'd done. And I recognize you almost don't realize it, how much experience you have, not only in the coaching itself, but my previous life skills. And I think starting that process made me realize that, there were other people with less experience than me. There were some people I'd been supervised with less experience than me, but actually we'd had some really great quality supervision. So I don't think you ever feel completely ready. I knew I had enough hours underneath me, enough years of coaching, and I started slowly and did a lot of practice with peers and things until I felt really confident. I did that on the course and then I did that afterwards. But I would say to anyone, if you've got that nudge, there's something in that, and go on the course because you learn so much on the course. You learn how deep it is, and with the wider reading, you'll know yourself when you're confident enough to do it. And you find that out pretty quickly. Very nerve-wracking at first. I remember doing the practice sessions, but like with anything with practice, you feel really ready to fly when you leave the course.
mm. This is so helpful, Kim. I'm sure it will help a lot of listeners, coaches who are considering supervision. And if we look a little bit of your experience of the course, what kind of um how did it challenge you, or were there any moments where you were surprised? I didn't expect to experience this.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the introduction of the different models. So even though I'd experienced a lot of supervision and I use lots of different models within my coaching, I had no idea kind of that supervision would have all these different models. And I got the feeling, like when you're learning to coach and you're like, oh, what do I use? Do I use the grower model or do I use this model or do you use that one? And soon it becomes second nature and you just kind of weave everything into your practice depending what your philosophy was. I was quite surprised at how many different ways there were to supervise. And
Mhm,
like I think I loved the seven-eyed model, and I use that quite often. And then I started doing much more group supervision. So I was going back through my notes, thinking, I'm sure we did a whole section on group, and then there were more models on the group coaching, and it was just that. And I must admit, when I was first doing it, I felt quite clunky, like oh, it's a model like when you're coaching. But I think that when you're feeling that on the course, it makes you remember what it was like to be a coach in the beginning as a supervisor. And that can only be a good thing because when you've got a new coach in front of you that you're supervising, you can tend to go, oh, yeah, this model and that model, and what about that? And you forget how, it felt clunky is my word, or scratchy when you were trying to go through a model and you were thinking of all the parts until it becomes quite natural to you. So I was also surprised on the course by how we changed teachers in different modules.
mhm,
And I loved it because each one brought their philosophy of coaching with them. So I had Yannick who kind of brought the existential, and I had Rachel Barber and Mia. And Mia was more corporate than I'd been experiencing because I was more service based. But what I learned from her as a corporate um, coach and supervisor, well, that was like gold dust for me because I hadn't really looked into that. And since then, some of my work has been corporate work. And it was my supervision course that set me up to be ready for that as a coach and a supervisor more than any other studying I'd done. So I guess what I'm saying in a long way is you get more out of the course than just learning how to be a supervisor. I think it just completely helps with your self-reflection. It helps where you want to go and look into next. It might make you think about what are my best clients, what are my strengths. It was very supportive. I had a lovely cohort and yeah, really, really in-depth learning. I really, really loved it.
Mm. And Kim, how did supervision, in terms of training as a supervisor, impact you in terms of your work as a coach, even just you personally, if it had any impact on you personally? So in also in other areas, not just in your supervision work.
Yeah, I think it made me really aware of wider thinking in all areas. And it really made me evaluate my own coaching practice. And you know, that way of when you learn to drive and then you pick up all the bad habits, I think it made me look at that. But it also made me step out, even in my personal life, of holding different viewpoints. Of you could have this person in front of you, and as a coach, you would get a certain aspect from that person. But if you gave them to two other coaches, they would get something completely different. And I think that's true in life. If you ask the right questions and if you stay quiet and evaluate and reflect on your interactions, it just makes life richer. And I think the passion I got from it was I realized because I'm in a service industry, so I'm in with resident doctors and teachers, they're working in a really tricky system. And I think what supervision helped me do is when I'm supervised by somebody, they're looking at, am I doing my job well as a coach? Am I thinking about all the different areas as a coach when I'm being supervised? But it's also my place. I can just go and say, I'm not sure I'm doing this right. Or, oh my gosh, could you please help me with the ethics? And I just thought, wouldn't it be beautiful if all people had supervision in that way? You know, not just for coaches, but for doctors, for nurses, for teachers, who could just go and say, I've had a bad day, I've had a bad week, I fell out with this person, this was hard. And we could have a lovely conversation with them about their role. That is my passion, is that supervision goes for all the kind of service industries. And it's not just for coaches. That's my big dream.
Mm. It's I guess it's that vulnerable place that professionally it's very rare to have, right? Where you can say, I'm not sure, am I doing this right? Or
Yeah,
what other ways are there to deal with this?
yeah. And
Is
I'm finding it hard, or I
mm,
don't get on with that person, and this person's driving me a little bit crazy in the workplace. And I think it's just so rich, isn't it? I think to answer your question as well about what wider impact did it have, I think I just asked, when you start to be a coach, you ask better questions, but being a supervisor, it kind of takes it to that next level. And what I liked about supervision was you're allowed to offer a different way or another way, not necessarily a better way. And I think that goes into your personal life. You're not there to just listen and let them work it out. As a supervisor, you are allowed to say, have you thought about checking this or have you read this? And I think I took that into my personal life as well of not telling people what to do, but offering a different alternative if they wanted it.
mm. And Kim, if we look at the people that you work with, your supervisees, what challenges do they tend to bring?
Yes, so I've got such an interesting mix now because I mainly supervise coaches who were on the resident doctor
Okay.
team. So I have 4 or 5 supervisees that I see every 6 weeks. And so it's interesting because I'm only one of a couple of supervisors who are non-medical. So it's a really interesting dynamic because I'm bringing a purely coaching perspective. They're also a coach, but they're also a doctor, either working or retired as well. And so there's this back and forth that took some getting used to because I'm a coaching supervisor, but I would need them to give me some medical aspects or
Mhm.
some assumptions that they've made because they're in medicine, but then I could come at that from a different angle of a coaching angle, a supervision angle of that's an assumption about medicine that you made back then and you're now bringing that to your trainee. So it's yeah, it was I must admit when I first did it I had imposter syndrome about it. I was like, who am I to tell a medical coach how to do something, or not even how to do something, but to
Yes.
supervise them and help them. So that was interesting, and I've been doing that now for about 1.5, 2 years, been a supervisor. And then my other people I've got a lot of student supervisees, and they're just starting out. And so it's like you've got this experienced group here, and then brand new, fresh out of college in Europe. One person used me and then she told the rest of her class about me. So that's been interesting. In the way that they learn differently to in the UK, they use some different models. So I had to go and have a look at those. And it was very different to my coach training. And I found that in that supervision, I had to bring in ethics a lot more. And then I had to try and find out, well, what ethical guidelines are you using? They weren't necessarily using the EMCC. So that was interesting. Some of the things they were bringing up, they were more mentoring than coaching, and I had to really pull them back from telling their clients what to do instead of a coaching approach. So that was great. And then my favorite at the moment is I've got a supervisee, and she's just starting out on outdoor coaching. And so we are working together to see what that brings. Ethically, what does that bring? What about being in public? So it's challenging my knowledge of ethical boundaries because I coach inside. And so we're kind of working that together as supervisor coach. And we're considering, should the supervision be outside? Because
Mhm.
maybe that would bring another layer to it. So with the range of supervisees that I've got, it's just adding to my coaching and that wider perspective of coaching as a practice because they're so varied again.
One of the things you're really showing here, Kim, is how supervision can be taken, or coaching supervision in so many different areas, industries, and this is wonderful to see. And exactly like you said, despite the fact that feeling a bit of an imposter syndrome, but still being able to do it.
Yeah. And the great support of the supervision team that I'm working with in the NHS. They are so passionate about their job and the latest findings and keeping up to date with research that we meet once a month and we get together and we make sure that everything's up to date and what are we bringing up. So they also do the supervision of supervision for me, and I do that for them as well. And yeah, it's really rich, and they're constantly bringing other things that they're finding from their other coaching practice. Yeah, it's yeah, I'm very, very lucky.
Hmm. You can really tell that you love diversity. You love this mix of, right, of clients, of approaches, of work, and it's um I guess it's challenging but also very rewarding at the same time.
Yeah, it's really rewarding, and I think you do have to spend a little bit of time doing the work. You can't you do have to look up guidelines that you weren't taught or teaching practices that are very different to yours. So you have to be quite flexible, but that's what I love. And I think as well, when a new coach comes to me as a supervisor, they seem to desperately want to find their niche. And I'm going, just coach all kinds of people, bring it to supervision. Let's find out what you love. Let's find out who you serve. Let's find out where your energy is to be the best coach you can be, rather than, what the marketing people might tell you of you have to have a niche and you have to stick to it. And it's generally for marketing purposes. So I think I've got a good experience um, across different industries to enable me to showcase that you can change and you can have two different types of people. So yeah, I think it's worth that. And also I recognize that I've got big gaps. I I probably wouldn't supervise a coach who was purely corporate, kind of disc profiling, outcome driven. I think they might be better with a different supervisor than me. So
Mhm.
it's knowing what you can bring as a supervisor and knowing when actually, as you do with coaching clients, knowing when actually a different coach might be better for that person at that time. So yeah, knowing your limits and knowing your breadth as well.
Mm. And Kim, how would you say that the course, the training as a supervisor with ICCS supported you in being able to hold all these various spaces, acknowledging that a big part of you holding these spaces is you bring things to it, right? Like the flexibility, the curiosity, the learning, the willingness to learn new things that might be relevant for that specific client. But in terms of the course itself, how would you say it supported this work?
I think that was the greatest surprise, was how it did, because each teacher came from a different philosophy of coaching. And then in your cohort, you may be in a cohort, or I was, with one person who was very thematic analysis kind of and therapy based. So gosh, I learned so much from them, but it wouldn't be my style of supervision. A couple of other people were more corporate. One person was just starting out as a supervisor and didn't even really know where they were going. So there were all these different ways of being. And then there was one lady who was very similar to me, but she was more in the teaching role where I'd started. So it was really interesting to watch her and listen to how she was supervising coaches and supervising teachers and think about, oh, that's where my practice may have gone. Is that where I should have stayed? So every week that you were all together and you would be doing practice supervision with them, you knew that they were going to come with a different style or lens to supervision, but that freed you up that you could too, and you could play with it and explore it and get feedback from them. And you never felt judged because their perspective was different. It was a completely different coaching philosophy or supervision philosophy than mine was. So that was brilliant about the course. Often you can get on courses and you all want to do the same thing, or you come at from the same way. We're all coaches, but we were all very, very different coaches. And that was really encouraged and supported and held in a safe place. You never felt, oh, I'm going to get it wrong. I would be bringing positive psychology and someone else had never heard of positive psychology, but it didn't mean the supervision I was doing was wrong or theirs was right or vice versa. So yeah, it was really well supported.
Mm. This is such an important part. I think that having this freedom as a student or as a trainer, supervisor in training, to have this freedom to choose who you are as a supervisor. This is what the theory is. These are the foundations of supervision, but what you do with it, who you are as a supervisor, you have that freedom to choose. And this was one of my criterias when I chose ICCS. I didn't want to go into training that was box type. This is what supervision is. This is how you need to do it. Because that was my coaching training, unfortunately. That was my experience where I had to do coaching in a certain way to be
Yes.
able to qualify and use models in a certain way. And I really wanted to move away from that.
Yeah, and it's that balance, isn't it? Because I love to be given information, like give me the models, give me the extra reading. I want all of that. But then it was very encouraged, well, you might love that model and you might love that one, and go off and explore and see what fits, see what, and I still explore now. I still will go into, I'll get this book out, I've got it here. And sometimes when I'm doing my group supervision for the NHS and the coaches are coming in as a group, I'll go back to this and I'll think, right, today I'm going to use that, and I'll offer it to them and say, I'd like to try something with you today. It's a new supervision model. We haven't done it. Are you all up for that? And they know I'm practicing something that I haven't tried yet. And they're such wonderful people, the coaching team, that, they want to help me learn, but they're also learning from a different style of supervision. And what I think the course gave us was this toolbox
Mm.
of, you could take one thing and use it for the rest of your supervision career if you want to, or you can, like I like to dip in and out. I've got my favorites, but I still use different aspects of it. And yeah, it was really flexible in the way you've described.
Mm. And Kim, what's the future holding for you as a supervisor?
What I would love is, I've just I would like the richness of the supervision I get when I'm coaching group NHS coaches. So we probably have 3 or 4 people in a room. So I've started a new coaching group, and I would like at most 6 people in that. And I would like to get some group supervision going. And the style that I would like to introduce in 2026 is half an hour of talking about theory or practice or setting up as a coach, or difficulties you're having as a coach that are more systemic. So it might be marketing, it might be I want to learn a new model as a coach, it might be I'm feeling I don't have my niche or whatever. And we can talk about that for half an hour, and then we have an hour purely client focused. So that's what I would like to do in 2026, is not move away from my one-to-one supervision, which I adore, but I want people to experience what I experience in the group supervision setting.
Mm. Well, I wish you all the best
Oh,
with your plans and with continuing to grow as a supervisor and as a coach. And thank you so much, Kim, for being here and for this very insightful conversation.
oh, you're very welcome. It's a great thing. I recommend the course to anyone. It's one of the highlights of my week is my supervision session. So yeah, just do it if you want to. If you've got the nudge.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Kim.
Okay, you're welcome.